Hi everybody, and welcome to Windy Pass area north of the Stewart Range. I'm hiking today with Bob Miller. Bob and I have been chatting for most of the day. Serious workout. I'm in my early 60s, Bob's in his early 70s, but we're making it happen. Thank you for joining us. Let me flip you around. Okay, it won't be long now, huh?
Yeah. How many times have I said we're almost there? Sort of like telling your little kids.
That's right.
If you have little kids.
Give me a chocolate treat if we get around to the next hairpin, Bob.
Well, it was worth it getting up to these lupin and sunflowers. Where's our paintbrush? We just had, they were there, but a quarter mile back.
Yeah.
So this gray stuff up here, I'm pretty sure, I was looking at my map this morning or yesterday. This might be, I called it the heterogeneous metamorphic unit.
Okay.
Figure that could encompass all kinds of sins.
Yeah, that sounds pretty safe.
And it's again one of these things I was talking about that's above the, structurally sliced in with the Ingalls.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a, it looks different to me, or at least my memory, than the Mount Stewart. So, one idea, maybe it was early Mount Stewart, and it just got sheared out during the thrust and placement.
So I'm just really impressed that you're basically the inventor of the Windy Pass thrust, like the first guy to call it the Windy Pass thrust. What were those earlier maps? Did they just call it a simple contact between the angles?
I don't think, it was a very different time. I think they were just shown as the Chwacum Ingalls contact was very irregular.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody done much work in here at
Yeah.
all. So yeah, they just had, this was pre-Tabor.
Right.
Roland was, I don't remember the chronology, but I think he was still working on the Wenatchee sheet
Mm-hmm.
in the late, when I was doing my thesis. I'm sure of it because he visited me during my master's.
Oh, Roland did?
Yeah, he's sort of unannounced. He came with Daryl, and I remember it was very intimidating.
Oh, boy.
Like, here's this guy who's done all this, and I'm a master's student who doesn't have the slightest idea what I'm doing. But it turned out okay.
Sure.
I still have a job, or I got a job, whatever. And yeah, so it was really exciting. So the way it worked with me was, Mish, we decided the southwest corner of the Ingalls, there's some sediments on Daru Creek, which is, you've been to probably, it's right there at the end of the North Fork Tanaway.
Mm-hmm.
And, and other stuff there. And so he suggested, why don't you map this southwest corner, And then if it turns out well, you can, maybe it'll become a PhD thesis if you do a good job and expand it.
Mish said that, or Tabor?
Mish did.
Mish, okay.
And so I started in that southwest corner, and I recognized that the stuff up Daru Creek was different than the rest of the Ingalls sediments.
Mm-hmm.
It's metamorphosed some. It was just fun because it was so poorly known. It was like, even as a master's making my mistakes,
Right.
I was making discoveries, and then decided to do a PhD thesis, and I ended up mapping about 110 square miles.
Oh, God.
And this was part of it. Well, there's a lot of glacial, but it was fun.
110 square miles.
Well, Mish's original students, they would do 200 square miles.
My God.
It was so unknown.
Yeah.
So mine was kind of an intergenerational, not the detailed studies of the day, but not 200 square miles either.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go hike the road for like 10 miles. So this is the stuff. This is part of what I called these heterogeneous metamorphics. See how they have all the greenish layers in there?
Yeah.
So that would be presumably a calc-silicate rock, something that had, maybe it was a marl, you know, those kind of calcareous shales.
Yeah.
Because it's giving you these probably diopside-rich layers, and there may be a little garnets in them. Grossular garnets, you know, not the...
But in the Ingles, not the Chewacum.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of...
Oh, we're not sure.
It's in that imbricate zone of...
Oh.
Could be something that when the ophiolite got shoved up, it just ripped off something that was...
Ah.
But I don't know that to be the case. And it's just an idea. And you can see there was a little bit of melt came in here. Maybe got deformed a little bit with it. You see how this granite comes in a little bit? Kind of interesting. This is the kind of stuff that Stacia gets really excited about. If she would have come on the hike today, I hope she's going to watch this. But anyway,
yeah, where's my caddy, by the way?
well, yeah, what's wrong with those two? What happened to the trio? Anyway, yeah, aren't those pretty rocks? So whatever you want to call them part of, there aren't very many of them once we go over the ridge or get to the ridge, depending how far we want to hike. The other side, once you drop down to the actual Chewacum, it's just, you know, just the same Chewacum like up Icicle Creek you've seen plenty of, with nice garnets and pretty rock, but not this green calc-silicate kind of rock, not with the calcium minerals in it, calcareous, whatever you want to call them. Minerals with calcium in their formula.
Right. So I think I'm hearing that if we get away from the windy pass thrust in both directions, deeper down into the Chewacum, it looks quote unquote typical of down low.
Exactly.
And if we get enough above the windy pass thrust, the Ingles looks, I know it's a mishmash, but it's not quite as funky as it is right here at the thrust.
Yeah, my interpretation, and of course we have a big gap,
Right.
is that it kind of would go up into the kinds of rocks you look at coming out of Cleellum, or
Yeah.
on the other side of Mount Stewart. You hiked up to Lake Anne with one of your shows, and we were talking about Bean Peak.
Yeah.
So to me, isn't that great?
Great. Hey, nice view here. Can you point out a couple more peaks to us? Now I'm rolling again, obviously.
Boy.
We're looking south. Ellensburg's up and over.
Well, that's got to be Mount Stewart there, right? I think I misidentified it before. Right. That's Mount Stewart with the glacier on its north face. It's so much more rugged when you said I've climbed it a couple times, and you come up the southern slope, and it's real gradual, and I haven't done the technical routes, but whatever the easy route was.
Boy.
And then you come up on top, and you look straight down to that glacier.
Oh yeah.
The first time I did it, it was like white out, and
oh boy,
it was scary kind of almost. And then
sure.
And then I think I was pointing out Kolchak over there, the big kind of wide one, and there's this big gully that goes way back with the snow. Kind of not a very rugged peak.
Right.
That's Little Annapurna, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you put this out here, there'll be some mountaineers out there.
Sure.
They'll correct us quickly.
Absolutely.
That I made a mistake.
They'll snapshot this, and then they'll label it themselves, and they
say, "What an idiot!"
I got a lot of practice with that, and that's great that people are wanting to share what they know.
Well, and it's the way science is supposed to be, so that's good.
Exactly.
I just think people have to remember, for me, it's been 30 years. Or is that more than 30 years?
More than 30 years, Bob.
Oh, that's almost 40.
You didn't get us lost. This is the old trail.
Yeah, so far so good. We didn't fall in the lake or.
God, what a perfect day this is. Seriously.
Yeah.
For a bunch of reasons.
Oh, it's especially now that we're to the pass. Yeah, I mean, the first time I hiked up here would have been, shoot, makes me feel old. First time I hiked here was 47 years ago.
Jeez.
Were you even born then, Nick?
Yeah, I was about.
I know Stacia and Mike weren't, and yet they're still not with us. I don't know.
So you must be in your early 70s by now?
I'm 71.
71.
Yeah.
Well,
And I feel it some days.
well, you're a real inspiration to be hiking on these trails
Yeah, well,
at the pace you're doing, and this is like walking with an encyclopedia, a 71-year-old encyclopedia.
that looks like a little chalkum that was imbricated. Look at the beautiful
Oh,
folds.
damn.
Aren't those pretty? Aren't those pretty? It's a pretty rock. Oh, well, on the other sides,
It just
maybe that yoga class you're taking is going to pay off to get a good picture of that. You're going to be more flexible than you were last summer. You wouldn't be able to take that probably.
Yeah, without Indigo Yoga in downtown Ellensburg, I would have fallen on my face right into that.
Yeah, the quartz veins are getting pulled apart, and the segregation's there.
So we're right. Am I overstating it? Are we right in the thrust fault zone now?
I would say so. I mean, yeah, I don't, you know, having the chalkum here.
Okay, well, I'm just, let's see. Would you mind if I kind of put this in my lap, and you're close enough, I can kind of show you a couple things. I've been sharing this and asking questions. Yeah, I've got a few question marks here and there. This is the color scheme I like. And so, to be clear, nobody had this windy pass thrust on their maps until you in the 1980s. Is that true?
Yeah, or 1970s. Even.
1970s.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
You can see how close. There's that little bit of, there's a little bit of Mount Stewart that separates this part of the Ingalls from the main mass, but not much.
Yeah, yeah.
Your greens are almost continuous.
Nice. Let's just do a little rapid fire. I mean, we've already done a bunch. Maybe I'll include some of our earlier stuff in this portion of the video. But if I come back down over here, so is this green Ingalls? How complicated is it? It looks like there's so many different subunits. Is this your mapping or is this somebody else here?
No, it's all mine.
It is.
That was my PhD.
Okay.
Well, a guy named Southwick did some work right near in the easternmost part of Highway 97, and then we went back, Jamie McDonald, Greg Harper, and myself, and Jonathan Miller in the early 2000s, and remapped it. But yeah, that's basically my map.
And where, you don't have a pointer with you necessarily, are we?
We are.
Our half window is there, isn't it? Oh, you do have a pointer.
It's right there. Right
Nice.
Where it says CS.
Okay. So the trailhead, 8 Mile trailhead, we were in some schist to start with, I think.
Yeah, I think we were somewhere like here, and then we
Yeah.
went through Mount Stewart, and then we eventually got to the Ultramafics. And then, in case you didn't know it, we climbed 2,000 feet straight up to this ridge. I'm sure you didn't breathe heavily. I was.
We were busy talking so much, I didn't really pay much attention.
No,
2,000 feet. Okay, well, seriously. All right.
Over two, I suspect.
Nice.
From the lake, I think close to 3 from the trail.
Okay.
Put in an honest day's work. Yeah, and here it is in detail now.
Yes.
Yeah, so we probably came through that little bit of Chewacum down low, and then walked into the Quaternary.
Yeah.
Then up through this Ingalls and then dropped down to the thrust, and saw that little bit, probably there actually.
Yeah.
There's structures, so that little bit of schist over there that we walked down into.
And these are all your little plots. What are these little plots? Are these foliations within the schist?
Well, there are foliations in everything that I had
Okay.
foliation. And as we were talking about, the Mount Stewart, unlike a lot of plutonic rocks, had a really has a noticeable foliation
Mm-hmm.
that, like I was mentioning, contrasts with what's down on Icicle Creek, where it's very subtle.
Yes. Yes.
And it requires a good imagination.
Okay.
But these are all pretty good.
I'd say so. Okay, I think what I want to really show you is a couple of handouts I've been using with everybody. And, you know, we got to get moving here, but let's... So, here's my buddy.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. So I was using that last winter, and you saw me using it, and you're like, hey, I got to take Nick up to actually see
That was
this
actually what you showed it several times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what made me kind of get nostalgic to get back up here for the first
Nice.
time in 35 years.
35 years.
But yeah, it's I think we pretty much saw that. You've videotaped it. You know, I guess it would be more conceptually because we had the Mount Stewart to our right the way we were looking.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that like Caroline would be right there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the revelation I guess I had, very simple-minded revelation. If we're going to take Merle's data, and let's just run with it, and Merle says we're down in Baja with this Pluton. This Pluton's coming up through these rocks, so that means all these rocks were in Mexico, if we're taking Merle's data.
If that's correct, yes.
Yeah.
And then that puts the question, like if Ingalls really was related to rocks of Josephine in southwest Oregon, then that was coming as well, presumably.
Okay.
At least part of the way.
Right. What do you know about the age of when this thrust fault was active?
I think we can pretty confidently say it was probably, pretty confidently probably, huh? Isn't that classic geologist, a field geologist? Is that 96 to 94 million.
Okay.
And the reason for saying that is the part of the Mount Stewart, and perhaps as young as 92, you have the range, the correct range there, but the rocks we actually see the foliation in, the closest date, which is on the 8 Mile Creek Road, where I think I pointed that as we went by, just a couple miles from here, is, I believe, 94.
Okay.
So if that's 94 million, then I would say with the fabric is in it, but again, it's not cut by the thrust. That relationship you drew, I think, pretty conclusively we saw over,
Right.
when we could run the ridge, we could just see it. That would suggest that this thing was, the Mount Stewart was coming up, it was still just enough melt in it, crystals were able to rotate. We like the term mush when we talk about late stages of magmas. It's, it's not all liquid. It doesn't go from 100% liquid to 100% solid.
Right.
And depending on how you like your oatmeal or mush, you can have wetter mush or drier mush, but the mush had to be dry enough that the crystals stayed together well, but wet enough they could rotate without breaking up.
I see.
And so that fabric, that foliation, the alignment of the grains we saw, I think would fit beautifully with deformation of a mush, pretty high deformation, but still while there was a little melt left, like maybe it was 80% solid, 20% melt, and it was just enough for those crystals to rotate.
I see. Thank you.
So, not the stuff you see prisoners get that's 80% gruel, 80% liquid, and 20% solid. Then you wouldn't have a fabric because the crystals would rotate way too fast. Early Cretaceous to mid-Cretaceous, prisoners call it mid-Cretaceous, which is when a lot of the thrusting, this is when the thrusting over in the San Juan Islands and the Shuxon thrust would be in the younger part of that interval, or in the Methow Basin up in near Winthrop and up and into British Columbia. That's when that occurred as well.
I mean,
so it all fits.
To use my corny thing from last winter, these mid-Cretaceous fireworks, like right after we have the big event 100 million years ago, whether you're into that or not, I kind of forget, but there's a lot of this thrust fault activity and
no
Pluton
question.
stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, really. Looks like that little guy's out kind of What's that for scale? That's a giant. They were giants in the Cretaceous, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I guess they had to fight off those dinosaurs, huh? Okay.
And as I'm doing this video on Friday, I'm like, wait a minute. I was at stop as your stop 3.2.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this, and we're right off the edge of the hook. And here's our fold axis and another fold axis in the Chewacum. Do you think the Stuart batholith was folded?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah, I think it was sheet-like there. It was a hook. Why we call it the hook, besides the fact that it looks like a hook, is that, you can even see, it's a little hard to see. We should have drafted our figure foliations.
No, it's a beautiful.
I'll blame Scott for that. I think he actually did draft it. He worked in the hook more than I did. But you can see the foliations, how they're going almost northeast here, not regional.
Oh, okay.
So just like, you know, a bunch of sediments, the beds come around like that. The bedding would go around like that. The foliation goes, looks just like a fold. And we have the full map right there, runs right into the hook, just as you pointed out. So yes, I think it was, so my impression is it was more sheet-like, maybe something like a so-like or something. And then it got folded into this aniform.
Well, come on now. Merle's saying that the thing wasn't folded, isn't he?
Well, you know, I think when Merle, and I would not want to put words in his mouth.
Right. We're going to talk to Merle again soon, but
remember, a lot of the data, the big volume of the Mount Stewart's 91. So without, I haven't looked at where he collected all his samples from, but a lot of the stuff down on, you know, Icicle Road, where presumably you would sample, or US 2 down towards Tumwater Canyon, or just right outside Leavenworth, the easy places, I would think, to cart a drill around. Those are in 91 million year rocks.
The youngest stuff in the Mount Stewart batholith.
But by far the largest volume. So I would guess that a lot of the magnetism didn't lock in. I mean, that would be, I'm not saying that. I would think if you wanted it all to be tilted at the same time, or not tilted, that the magnetism would come in after the folding. Not come in. The rocks would slowly cool and then lock in the magnetism. And so it would already be in that fold-like shape. That would be my guess, because otherwise, you know, there are these things, the fold tests that paleomagnetists do, and I'm sure Merle could do that.
Right.
Probably with the data would be routine to do.
Huh.
But yeah, that would be my guess, is that maybe the magnetism didn't really lock in until 93 to 91. So if it stayed hot enough, if you think, I mean, you know, I'm not trying to interpret paleomagnetic data since I'm ignorant, but.
No, I'm putting you on the spot here, but it is, I guess Mount Stewart batholith needs to be one of our biggest topics this winter, and yet if it's clearly folded by, in your opinion, and probably most, I guess, who've looked at the map pattern and looked at other things within it, it's clearly an issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the question is, so Mount Stewart, I mean, all of the work that, like when we wrote this guide, and Merle did his work, and a guy named Jay Ague and Mark Brandon at Yale did hornblende barometry, trying to get at the depths.
Yep.
All of that work was done. We probably thought the Mount Stewart all came in within 1 million years. And it wasn't until 2006 with the really great work that Jenny Matsell did that we knew the ages. And so since then, I think people have reevaluated it a little bit, and probably the person to ask is Merle's colleague, Bernie Hausen at Western. Yeah. And it's because Bernie did do some stuff with this, and I think he did re-examine the data. Okay. And I think he agrees with Merle in general. But you know, so that's the question. With the stuff at 96, which is most of the hook, the real old, did it lock in its magnetism then, or You know, as you kept pumping magma in, did it stay hot enough above when the magnetic field locked in or got reset or something? And that's I think pretty complicated geophysics or magnetism. Maybe it isn't.
Well,
sounds complicated to me, but but the idea being that, you know, the thinking about this over 5 million years is totally different than the way we were thinking about it in 1994, or we did this work, early 90s.
Well, that's the last thing we'll do then. I want to do more with that, and it's mainly Jenny's work, but it's new to me for sure, and I want to just get it from you, and then we will just I'll build upon it beyond that. You're saying that up until Jenny Matzell's work, 15 years ago or something?
Oh, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 15.
So she was able to show that all that pink stuff is not all exactly the same age. Can you show us on this map?
Yeah, I could show you. First off, the southwest body, as we call it, is very poorly studied.
Okay.
It's on the west side and a bunch of trees. And, sorry, anybody who likes trees. And then this area up here by the Stevens Pass that you've drawn in, this area up here, a lot of this is 96.
96.
There's a little bit of something called the Big Jim Complex. This is 96 as well. But it's mostly up in the hook that we have the 96. And then we called this the stem of the mushroom. And in the stem, Jenny has a couple of dates. And they go from, 2 or 3, go from 94 to 92 million.
Okay.
And my recollection, and I need to go back, is that place I pointed out when we drove up,
right,
somewhere in here, that we saw the Mount Stewart I said was dated. I'm pretty sure that might have been 92.
Okay.
But it was in that 94 to 92 of the sill. And then you come down like where Mount Stewart proper is, the peak, and all this big area in here. This almost entirely, and there's a good number of dates, comes out 91 million, 91 point something probably, but let's say 91 million, and there are uncertainties on those dates, of course,
right,
but they more or less overlap. So you had a large volume of magma down what we call the head of the mushroom, this area that came in pretty close in time, but 5 million years younger than up here.
Oh, that's wild. That's new. It was in Jenny's work, but I missed it.
Well, you might have seen her Swallow Canyon work.
Yeah.
This was, well, I'd be happy to send you the link or PDF. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really, she did a lot of work to get that, just the lab work to get those dates. We went out and, hiked around and sampled different places back in the early, I guess that was the early 2000s.
You and Bowering and his student Jenny.
Yeah, mostly Jenny and I.
And
so we had these samples, and they came out, really remarkably close in age. It's always the thing with geochronology. You got another 10 mages, would you see difference? Well, the amount of work to get it, a date, particularly back then, things are more automated. I mean, if Mike was here, I'd tease him about how easy it is now compared to when Jenny did her work. But it's still a lot of work now. I'm sure Mike would be happy to volunteer that to you. It's a lot of work to get a date.
So go ahead. Yeah.
That's all I was going to say.
So we're looking at, if I had to pick one number, I pick 91 for what we're looking at.
I think pretty much from what we know, everything we see is 91, plus or minus, a few 100,000 years maybe. But as soon as we start driving, we see just a little bit of the stem, because most of the time when you're driving, the sill region is the area between Icicle Creek and the Wenatchee River. So it's a very popular backpacking area, but it's not easily accessible by road other than this one little area we go through. It's mostly up in what are called the Chewacum Range, Chewacum Mountains.
So if I get into the weeds with the paleomag from this batholith, I'm going to start paying a little bit more attention to where their core sites were.
I think that would be wise. And I think 91 makes the most sense. It's the largest volume. So presumably they would have the most analyses from there. And it's true that this Stevens Pass Highway crosses makes that attractive for ease of sampling. But you know, Icicle Creek and Highway 2, there's plenty of places that were easy to sample. And 8 Mile Creek Road, I don't know if, no, that may not, no, that wasn't built then.
Well, I mean, not to beat a dead horse now, but you got me turned on about this. So pretty good evidence for folding here, but we don't really have that pattern down here. Are we saying this portion of the batholith was potentially not folded as much, or
Yes.
not at all?
I don't think it has a simple fold pattern, no. Do we have our foliation mapping? We must. Yeah, Scott, we decided to work on this. Scott put in a huge amount of work on the, I mean, I helped, but he did a lot of really good stuff. So Scott always liked making north go odd just to keep your brain working. But you can see our pattern, how the foliations wrap around the contacts.
Yeah.
So we would say these are largely contact parallel. So rather than being a regional fold,
Yeah,
this was being controlled by the margins of the Pluton.
I see.
And then when you get up, and the other thing about it, our pattern, what these symbols mean, if the dip was over probably 60, yep. If it's over 60, we would just have a line. We wouldn't, you know, rather than clutter the map, so you could see the big pattern. And then 60 to 30 had a triangle. And then if it looks like a hat, that's less than 30-degree dip. So that's, and so you notice where most of the hat is right near the Windy Pass thrust area. And that's kind of what we expected.
Wow.
Well, there's the hat in the stuff. But you can see it's flattening out as you get close to the Windy Pass, and then you move away from it and it steepens up. And what we would argue is that, you know, you get flow of magma parallel to the walls, you can see crystals rotating, or maybe the magma expands a little bit and just, say, takes a platy mineral like a mica and it's pushing it out this way, and there's a wall, so it's going to rotate like that, right? So it's parallel to the wall. So yeah, whereas up here, sure looks like it wraps around just like that fold you showed. And again, in the hinge, just like we expect from structure, the foliation dips less steeply. So yeah,
Okay.
and that's where the 96 is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's plenty. Thank you, Bob, so much. What a treat to listen to this, to learn from you right out here. We're not in some frickin' classroom right now.
Oh, it's beautiful to be up here.
This is about the most natural classroom as you can imagine.
And 2 more years, you get your free pass to go in the national parks.
That's what I hear.
Well, yeah. Well, the problem is they used to call it the Golden Eagle. My dad had one of those, and he was
What do they call it now?
he was so pleased that he saved all this money. The Golden Eagle. Now they call it a senior access.
Oh, come on.
Come on, you know. A Golden Eagle's a nice sound. Wouldn't you rather be a Golden Eagle than a senior access?
Seriously. So was somebody offended by being called a golden eagle? And that
I don't know. Maybe they like bald eagles better. I don't know. Whatever, that's the card that's sitting on your windshield.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't get a ticket.
You kidding me? I'm with a golden eagle. I'm golden.
Yeah. Well, tell them you're with a senior. There she is. You go to Lake Caroline?
Yeah, I think you'll have it all yourself.
Really?
Sweet.
Yeah, it's great.
Hey.
Have you guys been up to like Windy Pass?
Oh yeah. Back in 1975 the first time?
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
This is a geologist that invented something called the Windy Pass thrust fault, and there's a bunch. So he's
really?
back after
Back in the day.
Oh,
30 plus years. You know.
What's it called? The Windy Pass?
Windy
Thrust
Pass. There's
fault.
a big earthquake fault through here that isn't active anymore, but it's a key spot for the old bedrock geology here. Have you taken geology in college?
I didn't take geology. I was a bio.
Okay.
Never took any geology. Yeah.
What school did you go to?
North Park University in Chicago.
Oh, in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Wonderful.
Well, you're close when he's a professor, but
Yeah.
grew up in Wisconsin.
Oh, nice. Where were you, professor?
Now I'm in Ellensburg teaching,
Okay.
but I
Oh, nice.
went to University of Wisconsin for a long time.
And I'm at San Jose State as a professor, so.
Cool, cool. What were your names?
Nick,
Nick?
nice to
Bob.
meet you.
Bob?
And
I
you?
feel like you're famous somehow. I'm Annie.
Well, you're doing a good trail run.
Thanks.
Wow.
Yeah, enjoy.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that 94 fire really did a number, but we're back to what you remember in the mid-80s.
Yeah.
Haven't been on this trail since
I think like 85.
85.
Yeah, probably the first time I was here was 75.
And your parents were your field partners.
Yeah, later on, yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah, they came over. I wanted to show them this place.
They came out from Pennsylvania or Maryland? I'm
Maryland,
sorry.
yeah.
Maryland.
Yeah, well, they like coming out here. They'd visit, every 3 or 4 years. And Dinkelman de Comont, what it was.
Well, you figured that one out too?
Yeah, that was my name.
Oh,
We were driving on logging roads,
wait.
and I go, Scott, what are we going to call this? And I looked at the names, and I'm going, oh, this sounds boring. Dinkelman, it sounds like a delicatessen shop in New York.
Yeah.
And that's why I picked it. Well, you got to have some snazzy names, right? So we caught it. So that's how there's a place called Dinkelman Creek, and we were driving. When we drove over it, and I said, oh, why don't we call it Dinkelman? It has a certain ring to it, the Dinkelman de Comont.
Well, that brings me back to the last session of that crazy Eocene where all 4 of us were on screen together, and I think maybe I put Stacia off balance or something, but I think I asked, can't the crystalline core be just one big metamorphic core complex and have stuff slide both ways? And she kind of punted, I think, maybe, and maybe you. I'm just keep coming back to that. Like if we've got Cornelia to the west of the Okanagan Highlands and that dome,
Right.
are we sure that Cornelia has always been sitting right there? Did it slide to the west? Should we restore those elevator doors basically over the Okanagan?
Yeah, but don't you want Cornelia, if you like Baja BC, shouldn't Cornelia be down in California then?
Yeah, but I guess I'm visualizing the.
Maybe by that time it would be up.
Yes, that's I think the
Be up to
timing.
Washington by then, maybe at 50.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's not a typical one.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's more of that green rock. If we look at the Foggy Dew Fault Zone, where we camp, basically, there, the motion on the fault is right lateral, as you'd expect, but it also, based on the lineation, the slip direction from it, also is normal.
Is it?
So that's what I thought was so cool about it. It works well. The Foggy Dew isn't vertical like a total classic strike slip.
Right.
So if this is Canada up there, and this is northwest,
Yeah.
and it's dipping this direction,
Yeah.
the motion of the metal, the sediments, is like this, which makes sense, right? You've got sediments down against the metamorphic rocks, which is what you're talking about, I think,
Yeah.
what you were suggesting. So that works pretty well, to do that. And we kind of like that because one of the things we're trying to figure out on our project is how do you unroof the Skagit or bring it up. It isn't as big a problem as Stasia's Norway rocks we were talking about earlier, but it's still a problem. But then, the problem then on the west side is we have the Straight Creek Fraser, so that
Yeah.
obscures things.
Yeah.
If you do the reconstructions,
Right.
one of the things Jim Monger pointed out, 30 years ago, 25, 30, is that if you go to Canada, well, Canada was that way last time, I guess it is that way, then when you go, it looks like the North Cascades core or Skagit rocks kind of are domed so that you have the highest temperature in Washington and they get lower temperature by the time
Really?
you get up to Highway 3, say around Hope, British Columbia.
Is that
And then the same thing on the other side, the Harrison Lake area. Jim Monger made this argument that things that we would correlate with the Piqua, the Cogburn schist, and that, you know, look like Bridge River, all these, that those are in green schist facies or lower grade, lower temperature in British Columbia than they are in Washington. So anyway, so there is that sort of tilting on the northwest, but the east-northeast side, that's the Ross Lake Fault Zone. I think it probably did play a role.
Huh.
In the south, you know, all we really have here, I think we can show is doming, but of course the Chewaucum and Mount Stewart were dead well before the Eocene.
Right.
But that's always the issue with, and this is something that Paul Umhofer liked to bring up, you know, with strike-slip faults. I always come back to thinking about the San Andreas. I use that with students. After 1906, you know, that was a pretty well-studied fault.
Right.
And there still was not universal agreement on how much slip, or even if it was a strike-slip fault, I don't think. You know, people tried to match things up, and I don't know when, I don't know, was it 1950s or 60s, when the Pinnacles, Volcanics Pinnacles National Park now, and Nenach, or however you pronounce those volcanoes.
That finally did it for everybody?
I think that was it. Because I remember reading about, there was some channel, Poway, or whatever that town is down near San Diego. There's some talk about offset channels. And
okay, down in there is Lake Caroline.
that's right.
Okay.
And that's all Chewaucum schist.
Down at the lake.
And you can probably see through the trees just a little bit of darkish rock.
Yeah.
Down the lowest stuff you can see, that's Chewaucum.
Okay.
And then you see through those trees, there's that orange cliff
Sure.
with the talus.
Okay.
That's Ingalls Complex. So that's sitting structurally above, so the Windy Pass thrust
There we are.
is in the,
Right in there. Right. My fingers now have orange above. That's the hanging wall, the Ingalls. The gray below my finger is Chewaucum, so my finger's on the Windy Pass thrust.
exactly.
First discovered by the guy I'm standing. Okay.
And then the Mount Stewart makes up that high peak. You can see how it weathers like your pictures of other things. And so it comes down.
What peak is that?
It's Cashmere Mountain.
Cashmere Mountain.
You see it from Icicle Creek Road well. And it comes over, and you can kind of see where it stops, because see how green and grassy the slopes are over there through the snow?
Yeah.
And that would be in some of the rocks. The Ingalls is imbricated, the ophiolite. So if you trace its boundary, it comes down there, it comes way down into the creek, and it goes way over back where we were, because we hiked through Mount Stewart the first 2 miles or mile and a half. And so that contact, the boundary, the Pluton is, you know, going from up high down to the valley and then continuing along.
Yeah.
So it's just chopping everything off.
Got it.
And so we have the thrust there, and it's low angle, because one of the things, you know, we teach in geology labs early on is that, you know, things that are gentle are going to follow topography, like the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And how the things make all the V's. So this makes a kind of a classic, well, I could show you my map, but it just comes around, wraps around. You can see that's all Ingalls back there. It's all orange.
Yeah, beautiful.
So all the high country is orange. Down in the valley is schist. And then the thrust sits below us. It's kind of flat between, you know, that point you pointed out with your fingers, and I forget it. It's been a long time, but a quarter way down the slope or something like that on the trip.
We're still in Ingalls here, you're saying?
Yes, we're still in Ingalls here. Yeah, you can see it.
You were sitting here, or maybe over
somewhere
there,
in here, and it
you
just
had this
clicked
eureka
in.
moment. Yeah.
You clicked in. Well, you know, because I've been making my map, and it clicked in. And it works. And, you know, if we have time, it's not that far down to the lake.
Sure.
We can just walk down at a leisurely pace and look at the schist along the lake. And it's a pretty little lake.
And the
like-
light's not bad looking back this way, so that orange of the Ingalls just obviously is so easy to follow. And then there's the lop off again in the drainage of the Mount Stewart.
Yeah, so it would be coming through down there somewhere
Yeah.
and chop everything. There is, it's complicated. I don't know if I have the map. Tabor's map would show it, but there's I think it's called Cabin Creek.
Mm-hmm.
There was an old logging road that went from, there's a popular trail, or at least used to be Stewart Lake,
Yeah.
that goes up right at the base of Mount
Okay.
Stewart. It's very popular because of the view. And there was a logging road that went around to, I guess that's east-south. And on that, there's some Chewaucum as well, really. And interestingly about the Chewaucum, you've seen the Chewaucum in Icicle Creek. It's folded around and it's generally, dips are all over. The foliation in the schist is almost horizontal, just like you'd want it to be if you want it to be. And as we were talking about on the way up, the foliation in the Mount Stewart, that magmatic foliation, is sub-horizontal too, which is again part of the reason for arguing that the thrusting was occurring early Mount Stewart time, and then
Hello.
Mount Stewart intruded, and
Yeah.
the thrust said, "Time to stop and go somewhere else."
Oh my Lord, we got a woodpecker.
Really, a loud woodpecker.
Must see somebody.
There's that dead snag. Is it right there?
I'm looking hard. That's cool. He's happy to see us.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time. Thank you. I love you and goodbye.